Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining this morning, Shubha class, and hopefully attentive japa. Very difficult uh, for all of us, but we've got to keep trying. And anyway, let's continue with this. We're on part 4 now. This is so interesting. I just want to just take out as much as possible from this conversation between Narad Muni and King Parcinbarhi, the father of the Pachetas, and he's in trouble with Maya. So Narad Muni always comes to the rescue, and so the conversation goes on. And now the king is going to reply to Narad Muni for what he has been telling him, and then Narad Muni will explain it more to him. So the king replied, "My dear Brahman, whatever you have said, I have heard with great attention, and considering all of it, I have come to the conclusion that the acharyas who engaged me in fruity activity did not know this confidential knowledge. If they were aware of it, why did they not explain it to me?" Actually, Sri Prabhupada said that actually the so-called teachers or leaders of material society don't really know the goal of life. They are described in Bhagavad-Gita as Mayaya Parat Janha. They appear to be very learned scholars, but actually the influence of the illusory energy has taken away their knowledge. So real knowledge means searching out for Krishna. Vedascha sarve aham eva vedya. So that's the essence of the Vedas, to search for Krishna, not for fruity activity. All Vedic knowledge is meant for searching out Krishna, because Krishna is the origin of everything. Janmadhyasya yatha. In Bhagavad-Gita 10.2, Krishna says, Aham adir hi devanam. I am the source of the demigods. Thus, Krishna is the origin and beginning of all demigods, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all others. The Vedic ritualistic ceremonies are concerned with satisfying different demigods. But unless one is very advanced, he cannot understand that the original personality is Sri Krishna. He is the original personality, Govindam Adipurusham, Aham Bhajami. After hearing the instructions of Narad, King Parcinbarhi, another name for him, came to his senses. The real goal of life is to attain devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The king therefore decided to reject the so-called priestly orders that simply engage their followers in the ritualistic ceremonies without giving effective instructions about the goal of life. So Narad Muni, he's so convincing that he managed to convince the king against his better judgment, so to speak. So the king has agreed, yes, you're right. I have been wrong, doing these wrong ceremonies, and they will not help me in the long run. So let's do a prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Mukham Kroti Vachalam Pangum Langyate Garim Yat Kripa Tamhamande Shri Guru Din Taranam Pramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hariyam Tassat Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Toto Jem Udiriyat Nasta Preshab Abhadareshu Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloka Bhakti Bhavati Nestiki. Hare Krishna. Then the king continues, my dear Brahman, there are contradictions between your instructions and those of my spiritual teachers who engaged me in fruity activities. I now can understand the distinction between devotional service, knowledge, and renunciation. I had some doubts about them, but you have now very kindly dissipated all these doubts. I can now understand how even the great sages are bewildered by the real purpose of life. Of course, there is no question of sense gratification. So he's saying that it's not my fault, it's my teachers gave me wrong information. So what do? If you're following the wrong gurus and they mislead you, then they suffer and you suffer as well. So we have to be very careful. We should question everything, check everything out for ourselves. King Barishman was engaged in different types of sacrifice for elevation to the heavenly planets. People generally are attracted by these activities, and very rarely is a person attracted to devotional service, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms. Unless one is very, very fortunate, he does not take to devotional service. Even the so-called learned Vedic scholars are bewildered by devotional service. They are generally attracted to the rituals for sense gratification. In devotional service, there is no sense gratification, but only transcendental loving service to the Lord. And that is very difficult to understand, to follow, because we were saying, well, what about me? It's all about other people, or it's all about Krishna. So what about me? Who am I? What do I get? So it's very difficult to do what we think is although it is not, what we think is a one-way service. The Brahmanas, the priests, have been against this Krishna consciousness movement since it began with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu started this movement, the priestly class lodged complaints to the Qazi, the magistrate of the Mohammedan government. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to lead a civil disobedience movement against the propaganda of the so-called followers of Vedic principles. These people are described as Karam Jad Smarta, these Smarta Brahmins, which indicates that they are priests engaged in ritualistic ceremonies. It is here state, well, they're not that smart, are they? If they are in ritualistic ceremonies, they think they're doing the right thing, but they're actually wasting their time. It is here stated that such people become bewildered, araseopihi mohiyanti, to save oneself from the hands of these karamjat smartas. One should strictly follow the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what does the Supreme Personality of Godhead says at the end of Bhagavad-Gita? Sarvadharman paritajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papibhyo moksha yishami ma shucha. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful activities or sinful reaction. Do not fear. Oh, Krishna says that don't go into all these rituals. Just follow my instructions. The result of whatever a living entity does in this life are enjoyed in the next life. So Narada Muni is explaining the results of whatever a living entity does in this life are enjoyed in the next life. So even our next body is the result of this life. Our activities, or whether we suffer or enjoy, is due to the activities of this life. So we are preparing for our next life. A person doesn't know how one body is linked with another body. This is the interesting thing. How is it possible that one suffers or enjoys the results of activities in this body, in yet another body in the next life? So how is it possible that one suffers or enjoys the results of activities in this body? So what we are doing in this body, we will enjoy or suffer in the next body. This is a question the king wants Narada Muni to answer. How may one have a human body in this life and not have a human body in the next? Even great philosophers and scientists cannot account for the transferal of karma from one body to another. As we experience, every individual soul has an individual body, and one person's activities or one body's activities are not enjoyed or suffered by another body or another person. The question is how the activities of one body are suffered or enjoyed in the next. So everybody is responsible for their own karma and their activities. Nobody else is going to take on your karma or enjoy or suffer your karma. It's to you. Then how is it that only, then you would think that only this body will enjoy or suffer? How come the next body will enjoy or suffer what you do in this body? This is the interesting thing. Now, the expert knowers of the Vedic conclusions say that one enjoys or suffers the results of his past activities. But practically, it is seen that the body that performs the work in the last birth is already lost. So how is it to enjoy or suffer the reactions of that work in a different body? So that's the question. Atheists want evidence for the resultant action of past activities. Therefore, they ask, where is the proof that I'm suffering and enjoying the resultant actions of past karma? They have no idea how the subtle body carries the results of the present body's actions down to the next gross body. So that's the key. They have no idea how the subtle body carries the results of the present body's actions down to the next gross body. So when we die, our gross body is destroyed, exhumed, cremated, buried, whatever. But the subtle body doesn't die. That remains. And that subtle body carries the results of this body onto the next body. So this is, we don't die. We just lose the outer shell, the outer covering of who we are, and then we take on another outer covering. So we don't die. We can't die. We live. We just change our shell that we go into, or the instrument that we're going to use. Therefore, the next gross body must suffer and enjoy according to the subtle body. So everything is stored in the subtle body that we have. And subtle bodies will always be there. Even when we are dead, it will remain. The soul is carried by the subtle body continuously until liberated from gross material bondage. So the subtle body keeps going into one body, gross body, another gross body, another gross body, in whatever shape or form according to our karma. And subtle body is always there. It's just the material body, subtle body is also material, but it's the gross body that actually dies, not the subtle body. The gross body dies. The great sage Narada continued, the living entity acts in a gross body in this life. This body is forced to act by the subtle body, composed of mind, intelligence, and ego. After the gross body is lost, the subtle body is still there to enjoy or suffer. Thus, there is no change. So although we can't see the person, but everything is still there. There is no change. The person is still there. The living entity has two kinds of body, the subtle body and the gross body. Actually, he enjoys through the subtle body, which is composed of mind, intelligence, ego. But the gross body is the instrumental outer covering. When the gross body is lost or when it dies, the root of the gross body, the subtle body, the subtle body, mind, intelligence, and ego continues and brings about another gross body. The subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego brings back another gross body, although the gross body apparently changes. The real root of the gross body is always there, which is the subtle body. The subtle body's activities, be the pious or impious, create another situation for the living entity to enjoy or suffer in the next gross body. Thus, the subtle body continues, whereas the gross bodies change one after another. So that's all understood now. The subtle body remains as it is. The gross bodies keep changing, and the subtle body is part of that or enters into that body. Since modern scientists and philosophers are too materialistic, and since their knowledge is taken away by the illusory energy, They cannot explain how the gross body is changing. The materialistic philosophers Darwin has tried to study the changes of the gross body, but because he had no knowledge of either the subtle body or the soul, he could not clearly explain how the evolutionary process is going on. One may change the gross body, but he works in the subtle body. People cannot understand the activities of the subtle body, and consequently, they are bewildered as to how the actions of one gross body affect another gross body. So, effect of one gross body and your next body is through the subtle body, which is like it's like a storehouse of your activities and your karma. It just goes into another body. The activities of subtle body are also guided by the super soul, as explained in Bhagavad-Gita. Sarvasya cham hirde sanavishto matha samriti jnanam apanam cha. Excuse me. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Because the Supreme Personal Godhead as Super Soul is always guiding the individual soul, the individual soul always knows how to act according to the reactions of his past karma. In other words, the Super Soul reminds him to act in such a way. Therefore, although there is apparently a change in the gross body, there is continuation between the lives of an individual soul. So, we are bonded, we are stuck due to our karma and our activities, and we just carry on where we left off, basically. So it's been continuing on for eternity. We've been doing this. The living entity, while dreaming, gives up the actual living body. Through the activities of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or a dog. After giving up the gross body, the living entity enters either an animal body or demigod's body on this planet or another planet. He thus enjoys the results of actions of his past life. So, although the root of distress and happiness is the mind, intelligence, and ego, a gross body is still required as an instrument for enjoyment. So, we need the gross senses to enjoy or suffer. The gross body may change, but the subtle body continues to act. Unless the living entity gets another gross body, he will have to continue in a subtle body, a ghostly body. So ghosts are actually subtle bodies. One becomes a ghost when the subtle body acts without the help of the instrumental gross body. So the ghosts, they have the bodies there, they just haven't acquired a gross body. So people believe in ghosts, there are ghosts. People have seen ghosts. So that's the subtle body, or the person did not get his gross body. As stated in this verse, Shaina imam utsriya shubasantam. The gross body may lie on a bed and rest, go into a dream, and return to the gross body. When he returns to the body, he forgets his dream. Similarly, so this is an example given. So similarly, when the living entity takes on another gross body after he dies, he takes on another gross body, he forgets the present gross body. The conclusion is that the subtle body, which is the mind, intelligence, and ego, creates an atmosphere with desires and ambitions that the living entity enjoys in the subtle body. Actually, the living entity is in the subtle body, even though the gross body apparently changes, and even though he inhabits the gross body on various planets. All the activities performed by the living entity in the subtle body are called illusory because they are not permanent. So the soul is carried in the subtle body, not in the gross body. It always remains in the subtle body, and he acts through the subtle body rather than the material body. But we need the material body to enjoy or suffer our desires or our activities. So now we talk about liberation. Liberation means getting out of the clutches of the subtle body. Liberation from the gross body simply involves the transmigration of the soul from one gross body to another. When the mind is educated in Krishna consciousness or higher consciousness in the mode of goodness, one is transferred either to the upper heavenly planets or to the spiritual world, the Vaikuntha planets. One therefore has to change his consciousness by cultivating knowledge received from Vedic instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the disciplic succession. If we train the subtle body in this life by always thinking about Krishna, we will transfer to Krishna Lok after leaving the gross body. This is confirmed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna says in Bhagavad-Gita, Janma karma chame devyam evam yoveti tattvataha tyaktava deham puna janma neti mam eti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So Krishna confirms that once, if you get to know my appearance and activities, you will not have to come back and take birth in this gross body again. Thus, the change of the gross body is not very important. But the change of the subtle body is important. So this is the key. We only think far as the gross body. But Srila Prabhupada mentioned it's a change of the subtle body is important. If we change the subtle body, we won't have to worry about the gross body. The Krishna's consciousness movement is educating people to enlighten the subtle body. So subtle body is the root. The perfect example in this regard is Ambrish Maharaj, who always engaged his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Savai Manha Krishna Pad Arvindo. Similarly, in this life, we should always fix our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, who is present in his Archa Vigraha, the incarnation of the deity in the temple. We should also always engage in his worship. If we engage our speech in describing the activity of the Lord, our ears in hearing about his pastimes, and if we follow the regulatory principles to keep the mind intact for advancing in Krishna consciousness, we shall certainly be elevated to the spiritual platform. Then at the time of death, the mind, intelligence, and ego will no longer be material contaminated. The living entity is present, and the mind, intelligence, and ego are also present. When the mind, intelligence, and ego are purified, all the active senses of the living entity become spiritual. Thus, the living entity attains his Sat-Chit Ananda form. The Supreme Lord is always in his Sat-Chit Ananda form, but the living entity, although part and parcel of the Lord, become materially contaminated when it desires to come to the material world for material enjoyment. The prescription for returning home back to Godhead is given by the Lord himself in Bhagavad-Gita. So we have to work on our mind, intelligence, and false ego. And Lord Krishna tells us in Bhagavad-Gita 9.34, what does he say? He says, Man mana bhav bhakto mad yaji mam namaskru mam veshyasi yuktavevam atmana mat prayanha. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me, being completely absorbed in me. Surely you will come to me. So that is the lesson for us for today. Excuse me. So we have to work on just not on the gross body. We have to work on purify our subtle body. That's the key to this. We have to purify our mind, our ego, and our intelligence. We can purify them. We won't have to worry about the gross body. Gross body is only the result of what we do with our subtle body. You know, how we think, how we behave, what kind of ego we have. You know, we think that it's me and my like that, I'm this, I'm that. So we can improve on that, then improve the subtle body, and the gross body will sort out itself. So that's the key. So thank you so much for joining. Jai Prabhu, Madhav Shyam Sundar Prabhu, Puri Mataji, Sarvashri Mataji. Love to hear from you on this topic. I think it's a very nice topic, and certainly an eye opener, because we only think far as the material body. We never think about the subtle body, or we never think in terms of the subtle body. We might think about the mind and everything, but we never think about as a subtle body, which we are encased in. We are encased in. We go to shed that subtle body. I mean, we keep shedding the gross body, but we need to shed the subtle body as well and attain a spiritual body. Thank you so much. And so, Praveen Mataji, please let us
Hare
know what
Krishna,
you think.
Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Yes, that's very nice. Now I can see what you meant. Very interesting, So, because we only think of the gross body all the time. So we think, oh, we'll take a shower to purify ourselves, and we don't think what we need to purify. Yeah, it is important on hygiene basis. Take shower before we do anything. But the most important thing is to think of mind intelligence and false ego. We have to purify that, and that can only be purified by a devotional service when we surrender to Krishna and engage, 24 hours in thinking of Krishna. So that will purify us, and that should be the aim of life. We need to get out of the subtle body, not just this gross body. So it is like an eye opener. Just never thought like that. We just went, okay, don't want to take birth again. So, but my question is, Prabhuji, what happens to the subtle body? How long does it before somebody takes birth? Is it mentioned anywhere in the scriptures? Subtle body, like you said, like the ghosts, they are like subtle body. So where do they live then? What happens? What happens when somebody passes away?
Yeah, that's a very, very long topic, Mataji.
Yeah.
I think you want to take this one? No. Yeah, I think we discussed like this before, but I'm not big expert on this, but there is a lot of information on it in the, I think, Garuda Puran. There's a lot of information on this exactly. So, I'm not very good at facts and figures. So I think there's a Garuda Puran. There's a lot of information on the internet. You can search on what happens to the body after death, and there's like a lot of classes on it as well. And I think you're talking about a year, at least 9 months to a year before any change takes place. Yeah. So that's all I can tell you. But if you want the details, then yeah,
There are classes. Yeah.
There's classes
Yeah.
and there's information, written information as well on the internet regarding these things. What the soul is doing in the first few days after death, and then how long is it before it takes on another body. Is all the information is there, and what happens to the soul, where does it go, everything is quite scary, know this information as well sometimes. What happens to people who didn't I think Jai Prabhu is mentioned some let's see, get the information on. Okay.
That we should learn to train the mind, not the body.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yeah. So,
yeah, then also talks about the importance of the guru as well, so which is very important. So pretty never he's blaming on the, he didn't have the right guru. So it is important to be in the disciplined succession where you're getting the right information. And that's what we can see actually. Now people, they are saying, oh yeah, we got guru. And what are the gurus teaching, like other, impersonalists and so. And like my sister-in-law used to, oh no, my mom's guru say you can eat meat. So, because the gurus, what they're doing, they say, yeah, it is okay. You can do the same. So it is important to, but the thing is then people who don't know what is wrong, what is right, Prabhu, then it is hard for them to make decision. unless you have got a way clue, you know, what is right. And then otherwise people are thinking, yeah, that is the right way. You know, the guru is saying this, then it must be right.
Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada has given us information how to make sure that your guru is right, because there are a lot of gurus and there's a lot of mishmash and people giving you information sometimes to make money. Right? There's a lot of gurus out there, but there's a criteria that we have discussed that needs to be followed. So one is the guru must come in a disciplic succession, which starts with Krishna. So we have like the four sampradayas, right? So it must come from the Lord Himself. Otherwise, somebody just concocted some philosophy on the way by themselves, and they are spreading it as the ultimate knowledge, which may not be the case, and you get misled. And secondly, sadhu shastra, and and guru. So the guru's information must match with sadhu and shastra as well. Is what the guru is saying. You can check. So we were saying earlier on that what the guru says is important for us to cross-check it with the other sadhus. Do they say the same thing? And also check with Shastra. Is the Shastra, is the Vedas, the Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, is he saying the same thing as this guru is saying? So, if the guru is saying you can eat meat, is that what the sadhus are saying? Is that what the Vedas, is that what Bhagavad Gita says you can eat meat? Or does Bhagavatam say you can eat meat?
Yeah.
So there's, we don't just follow the guru, we have a cross check.
Cross check, yeah.
Sadhu saying something, we check in the Shastras and the Guru. And if the Guru is saying, we check in the Shastras and Sadhu, check it with other sadhus as well.
Yeah, I was listening to Prabhupada's lecture this morning, and Prabhupada was saying, like, gurus, some of them, they know the Vedas, they know so much, but they're still engaged in like politics. So that means they're still entangled. So that is not the right thing. So there are clear instructions by Prabhupada, how to check and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Prabhupada's thought of everything. He's left. He said, "I will with my books." So, like, even now he's not here in his gross body. He has left all the information, or he has answered all the questions that we may have. We can find them in his books. Sometimes we may not be able to read or find the information because a lot of time he hasn't repeated himself. He's answered a lot of questions, so many questions that you might not find it. So this is where the sadhu and guru come in. They can explain to you what Prabhupada said. But sorry.
Yeah, do you think Prabhuji, like Prabhupada would, because to take everybody back, so do you think Prabhupada would have come back? Will he be here now?
You take everybody back, yeah?
Yeah.
I just remember reading somewhere that the guru remains in the material platform or material world until he has taken back all his disciples. So I think it's probably about his direct disciples and then the next guru and the next guru, like that. He will take back all his disciples, and then his disciple will take back his disciples, and I think that's how he would continue.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Sarveshi Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, I think it's all been explained very nicely about the gross body and the subtle body. Subtle body is more important than the gross body. We get our gross body through our subtle body. And it's about what happens about body, like when we die. For the Guru Purana says for 10 days you don't have body. You just have mind, intelligence, and false ego. And that's why for 10 days the body and the soul, they're in your house. And that's why they have to give this thing down to make the body. And if you don't do it, then it becomes ghost without the body. They call it pret. And then after 13 days, then they do the Brahma Bhoj. Then they take their journey onward. But they've given certain kind of bodies. So I mean, whatever karma you've done, which you are road you are going, everybody doesn't go through the same road. They go different road according to your karma. And it takes about when it's 6 months there in the heaven, the other planet, it's 12 days here, and then it's 1 year, then it's day and night, and then the people do 1 year their Brahma Bhojo Kriya Kram, they say, and then after that, then they are judged. Then what kind of body you're gonna have, what else according to your karma. So that's how we take our next birth after 1 year. So but everybody doesn't do it. So it's when we Shastra, that it's written in Guru Quran, like that you don't have the bodies when for about 10 days. Then after that you pin it down, then you get the body, then you continue a journey. And you get different types of body to suffer, where some people go to hell or what kind of, there's different kind of body, but mind, intelligence and soul are the same. Whatever you do in goodness, passion or in ignorance, according to your activities. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Absolutely. So this is all the detail. Varsha Prabhupada also says that don't worry about too much about detail. We should worry about getting out of this this gross body, going back home. That should be our main aim. He says that when somebody's house is on fire, he's not thinking about this and that. He just needs to get out. And it's like that our house is on fire, and we got to leave this body and go back home. Or another example is given, like if a mosquito bites you, concerned about which mosquito it was. You don't go in search of which mosquito bit you. You go and do, take the remedy, try and sort out yourself. So detail you can know, but it's not as important as doing something about it. That's more important, actually. We know that we are stuck in this material body, and we have a subtle body, and which needs purifying. We need to purify the subtle body, especially the mind. Definitely needs purification, because it does play tricks on us. Krishna says he's the mind himself, but he's powerful as Krishna, but Krishna has given us ways that we can make it our friend, otherwise it will remain our enemy. So he's shown us the way as well, that how we can purify the mind, purify the intelligence, purify the ego. So when we purify these things, that's what the subtle body is: the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So we purify them, you purify the subtle body, and when that's purified, then you can take on a spiritual body. So thank you all so much. Wonderful discussion. Let's do a couple of rounds, and Sureshi Mataji, please do the first round. Praveen Mataji, do the second round. Ready?